Hello and welcome back to another edition in our series, Dynamics Unplugged, Dynamics 365, Finance and Supply Chain Management, Dynamics A to Z. Today we're back with the letter W. We're down to the final four letters. W is an obvious one today. W is for warehouse or warehousing in Dynamics 365, Finance and Supply Chain Management. We're going to hit on some topics related to earlier letters in the alphabet that we did and talk about some new things as well. So starting off in the warehouse management module, I want to highlight really three new features. Microsoft is constantly trying to improve the experience and make implementations more efficient and easier. So there are three new W's we're going to look at today. Starting off here under warehouse management setup, we have wizards, a new section, two new menus available: warehouse management initiation wizard, which is about configuring the module and some of the default parameters and shared settings for all warehouses. And then the warehouse initiation wizard, actually applying warehouse specific configurations to your warehouses. We'll take a look at both of those, and then we'll also take a look at a new form called warehouse groups and how it can be used. Here we are now in the warehouse management initiation wizard. There are several configurations that must be completed that this wizard helps you defining your location formats or the number sequence perhaps that your location IDs use. Are they alphanumeric? Do they have separators in their identifiers? Your location types, which is a mandatory field that's assigned to location profiles, how you configure different types of locations, what they're used for, what level of tracking is done at those locations, any volumetric or dimensional limitations for those types of locations. Inventory status, defining your inventory status as a default work user for the mobile device for a warehouse, and posting methods as well as default parameters. So walking through this wizard kind of gives you a very basic structure for your outbound location profiles, stuff that's commonly used to separate out your locations in a warehouse and distribution facility and receiving location, staging, packing, your final shipping location, how you do sorting, what your generic user account is called. All of those can be changed. These are suggested for you. Your default inventory status ID, a default work user password, what those formats are going to be assigned. So here I'll put in test to continue through the wizard. We can now tell it to create all of those locations, those formats, those types that are going to be required, start to initialize my parameters and any methods that need to normally be created that I'd be doing one by one. I'll click finish. And you can see we now get messages about what has been created. Normally, you would have to go through warehouse management. You'd be going into your parameters. You'd realize that you'd have to go in and populate all these parameters, and then you'd be going individually into those menus and creating all those configurations. You'd be going into warehouse and saying, okay, here's my location formats, creating those manually. You'd be going into your location types. You'd be clicking new and creating those manually. So the warehouse management initiation wizard helps us with that. The warehouse initiation wizard actually helps you set up things that are specific for each warehouse or new warehouses, the locations that are tied to a specific warehouse, directives, work classes, work templates, wave templates. You choose which warehouse they're going to apply to. You define the naming convention similar to what we saw with the warehouse management initiation wizard. All of those could be overridden. Maybe we want to call this something like inbound and sales becomes outbound. Then we get our staging area. If we are using staging, if we have pick and put pairs where I'm taking from a shelf to a staging area and then a staging area to my bay door, we're using packing stations versus just a simple pick and put, like we take something off the rack and then consider it out the bay door shipped immediately. What our picking work classes are going to be and location directives, those can also be overridden. And then a similar setup for our final shipping area. What is our default outbound location? Any directive codes that are needed, work classes and directives. Confirmation of how many of each configuration will be created and finishing that process. Okay, so now that we've looked at the two new wizards that help you configure a warehouse more efficiently, there's one other new form, and that's the warehouse groups. So under warehouse management setup warehouse, we have warehouse groups. The cool thing about these is warehouses can belong to many different groups, and this gives us flexibility in our setup. Outbound warehouses or warehouses that are doing shipping might require a lot of the same configurations and similar rules. Same thing on inbound. Here I have two cold storage warehouses that are going to have similar profiles and have configurations that are going to be shared. Inbound, I have 6 different warehouses, a couple of warehouses that are doing manufacturing, outbound, and packing, and so on. As I mentioned, one warehouse can belong to one or more groups. And how really then are they used? One way is in location directives. You'll see there's a new section, warehouse selection, or instead of just applying to a single site and warehouse, I can now say this location directive applies to a warehouse group or all warehouses. That makes it a lot easier. If I have the same rule, I no longer have to create it one by one or do a lot of copying of directives and creating new ones. So that's really powerful. Another way is with my wave templates. Wave templates can be shared. So I gave a few examples of having a shipping warehouse group and a production warehouse group. You might have wave templates that are going to be applied to a group of warehouses, not just a single warehouse. So here I could say this wave template for this particular warehouse, it's going to apply to a group instead of site 2 warehouse 24. And that might be my outbound warehouse group. However, those warehouse groups are not used in all places. For example, if I go to something like document routing, I still have to configure these per warehouse. So the new feature doesn't apply to every area where you might have configurations that are similar or shared. It is limited to a few of the examples we showed with location directives and wave templates. And that's it on today's session, Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, Dynamics A to Z, and we will see you next time.